Good morning. Happy Thursday, and welcome to the Inside Texas Football YouTube channel powered by InsideTexas.com. We got Justin Wells. We got Ian Boyd. Got myself, Joe Cook. Thank you for joining. Make sure you like this video and subscribe to the channel. And we know what a lot of people want to talk about. Diet Friday. I like that one. It takes me back to about 10 years ago when I was trying to figure out what bar I'd be going to. Times have changed a little bit. But now, guys, we got this is the fun part of the off season a little bit. We've kind of been immune to it for the most part. We thought maybe Tashard Choice was going to be the one that created an opening. That didn't happen. But now we've got everybody hanging on pins and needles trying to figure out who's replacing Blake Gideon. If you have not heard, reportedly Blake Gideon, the Texas safeties coach and associate head coach for defense. He's heading to Georgia Tech. Tyler Santucci went from Georgia Tech defensive coordinator to the Baltimore Ravens linebacker coach, creating an opening for Brent Key's staff. And now Blake Gideon, who has bounced around all over the I-10 and I-20 corridor between Ole Miss, between U of H, now at Texas, kind of goes back up to that I-20 corridor and gets a play calling opportunity. Ian, as far as maybe schematics or anything like that, what are your thoughts on Gideon? I don't want to go like full legacy because so many people just blame a lot on him for no reason. But Gideon, the coach, what do you think his tenure at Texas will be remembered for?
It's got to be that he had a white walk-on safety on a starter role unexpectedly for multiple seasons and play really well, I think. I think any safeties coach would have had the same thing happen with Michael Taft. I don't think it was necessarily because of Blake Gideon, but it's just funny that Gideon, the 4-year starter that everybody wanted to replace the whole time when he was a Longhorn, had a guy that initially people wanted to replace, but it actually won everybody over in Michael Taft. I don't know, like Terry Joseph is very prominent on the staff. Pete Kwiatkowski is very prominent on the staff. I don't know that it didn't feel like Gideon was a very prominent member of the Texas coaching staff the last few years. Like you could kind of forget he was there, right? So you're muted, Joe.
That's weird. I don't know why. I didn't even have my mute button on this time. He was hired. He came from a special teams coordinator's role too, I think, at Houston. So
wasn't he at Mississippi?
He was at Ole Miss. Yeah, he was at Lane.
That's right.
So he had some special teams coordinator experience as well. So he's got a very good coaching resume. Obviously now he's about to have Michael Taft be, he has Michael Taft as an All-American. He's coming back. He's got Andrew Makuba on his way to the NFL. Corners and nickels worked with Terry Joseph for the most part. But he turned also Jelani McDonald into a really quality safety and, helped out with nickel as well. And he was, Jeff Banks being the special teams coordinator gets a lot of the credit and blame. Blake Gideon was there to help out with special teams a lot as well. Justin, you kind of see this question from our guy Sugar Daddy. What was his impact as a recruiter? Obviously, we know Jonah Williams is coming in. And when there are these big recruitments like Jonah Williams, it doesn't just fall on a position coach. Like Arch Manning isn't here only because of A.J. Milwee. A.J. Milwee was very pivotal in Arch Manning's recruitment. Blake Gideon was very pivotal in Jonah Williams' recruitment. So what does Texas lose on the recruiting trail with Blake Gideon heading to Georgia Tech?
Yeah, there may not have been a coach on the staff that benefited more from NIL than Blake Gideon. I can't think of an assistant coach that goes out on the recruiting trail that benefited more from having a back pocket full of cash to go to his recruiting destinations. I think that was the major reason that there's been some success there in the recruiting world. On the field, you have to give the man credit. Michael Taft, Makuba, Jelani McDonald, you mentioned these guys. Like he's done a tremendous job. Jordan Johnson-Rebel, he got some run last year, did a tremendous job with him as well. On the field, Blake got it done with the guys he had. So you got to tip your cap. On the recruiting trail, he was just the benefit of being at a great place at a great time in the NIL era. He's one of those guys that, he connects because he's so brutally honest. And I think hardcore parents dig that. He's an old school guy. His dad was a coach. He grew up in a coaching family. So he kind of has that chip. He kind of has that personality. But on the field, the guy was tremendous. Ian missed a really good opportunity. What's he going to be known for? Well, I mean, it doesn't matter what he does in the coaching world. He's always going to be known for 2008. That's how he's always going to be known in my house and many, 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 many other houses. That failure in Lubbock, that very heartbreaking night. But he made up for it. He made up for it with Michael Taft. He turned a walk-on into an All-American. I think on the field he was great, but off the field, the recruiting, honestly, he was probably the least strong recruiter of the entire staff. If there was a weak link in the recruiting staff going on with Texas right now, it was him. And so, it's going to be interesting to see who they bring in. I know we had talked a little bit about Doug Belk. I know we'd mentioned a couple other names in some group texts. That's the fun part of the coaching search. We get to kind of speculate and start digging into some sources and figuring out what direction they're going to go. But in recruiting in 2026, the in-state crop for safeties is a little down. And that's why they've actually gone after some guys out of state, especially in the Georgia area, the Florida area. They've gone out of state for some of those guys. And so I don't think recruiting is going to be affected whatsoever. If anything, might get an upgrade on the recruiting side with whoever they bring in. But on the field, Gideon did his job.
Hey, Justin, how come Earl Thomas doesn't get blamed for misplaying the angle on the tackle on Michael Crabtree the next play?
Or
he heard a whistle.
Earl Thomas does get blamed. The one that doesn't get blamed is Curtis Brown.
Yeah, Curtis Brown whiffed the tackle.
He whiffed it. Yeah, but they didn't drop an interception that would have basically sent the Longhorns to the national championship.
If you make a tackle there, the clock is running out.
I agree, 100%. And if your hands aren't full of butter, you're playing for a national championship against Florida in 2008, and you probably beat them. It's a really good matchup.
So we'll keep on going. This one from Blake.
I was just answering the question. What do you remember about Gideon? And Ian's over here sweeping it under the rug like it's a bug or something. I didn't forget that.
This from Blake Bryant. Losing assistants to promotions is a sign of a healthy program.
Amen.
I agree with that a lot. And to Gideon's, looking at his resume, safeties coach, special teams coordinator, safeties coach, special teams coordinator. Now he's getting the opportunity to call a defense at Georgia Tech. I think Key is a defensive coach as well. So he's going to be under a pretty quality defensive mind there in Atlanta. And at the same time, I know, Justin, I hear what you're saying about his recruiting chops and what they are, but this is where a lot of his connections are. Ole Miss, Houston, that is a place that goes all up and down that I-10, I-20 corridor. And so this is a place where Blake Gideon is probably a little bit familiar with a lot of the connections with high school guys. So effectiveness, I get that argument, but this is still where he's familiar, and it should help him probably get some players at Georgia Tech.
You know what else helped him was the Zealous Hicks recruitment. He hung out in Georgia a lot. And so I think he got a little ingrained in that program. They've got some good coaches there. I got to hang out with a handful of those Georgia Tech guys at one of the Grayson games back in October. Those guys are great. I think they're building something really cool in Atlanta. And so it's a great opportunity. Bryant said it right. Hey, this is a sign of a good program. Blake Gideon earned this. I really fully believe that. I think he is very good when it comes to X's and O's. Communicating, man, I don't know. Building relationships, par. But the X's and O's part of it, I think he's tremendous. And so I think he got a little head start with the Zealous Hicks recruitment, hanging out in Georgia as much as he did. And that's essentially where he's going to be recruiting a lot now.
It's a shame they don't have Scotty Hazelton around anymore. Although
I was thinking that as well.
Like he got a better job at Wake Forest. He's the DC, so that's hard to beat. But he was helping Coach Gilbo into a respectable starting nickel last year, so Jade Barron could play corner and win the Thorpe Award.
Well, Gideon also taught those nickel spots. They taught linebacker play in those nickel spots because they wanted to assure they were good with gap. They were good with setting an edge when it comes to their side, things of that sort. And so if you talk to sources within the program, they'll tell you like Gideon was unbelievable when it comes to like coaching on and off the field.
One of the things that's kind of become apparent is we go back to when Pete Kwiatkowski was hired, and his staff on the defensive side of the ball kind of came together before PK was added to the top, because I think there was a sense that, I don't know, maybe Muschamp was available. I know Dan Quinn was somebody they tried to talk to and get him in Texas. But there was, Gideon was brought in basically because of a lot of Muschampian connections. And then PK comes in and they all melded. It took a little bit, but they all finally melded together. But now Pete Kwiatkowski gets an opportunity, Ian, and Steve Sarkisian obviously is the overseer of it all, gets an opportunity to bring in somebody who probably is more, dyed in the cloth of what Pete Kwiatkowski prefers to run. So what might you be looking for from Pete Kwiatkowski and from Texas schematically when they're looking? What background are you looking for their next safeties coach?
Well, it could also, we may find out if input levels are changing on the Texas defensive staff with this hire. Johnny Nansen was a pretty influential addition to the staff, and he has Sark's ear from a long-term relationship. So, but the big change they made after adding Nansen was to run more match 3 defense, which is actually what Pete Kwiatkowski had done at Washington anyway. You would think that they would want a safeties coach that's good in that scheme so they can keep – that was very effective last year. I don't imagine they want to move away from that. And they've been recruiting to it now with these taller corners like Cade Phillips and then a big safety like Jonah Williams. These are more match 3 kind of players. So I think they'd want a coach with a familiarity with that system.
A lot of people in the chat are talking about Akina. Is that his background?
His man coverage. He can do that, but it's his.
You talk about dyed in the wool. That dude is dyed in the wool. Man.
There we go.
You want that guy to A, coach corners, and B, just drill man coverage till the cows come home. I imagine he might be amenable because he just got demoted from defensive coordinator for the gazillionth time of his career. He was promoted from cornerbacks coach to defensive coordinator, and everything fell apart. So now they're sending him back to corners.
They did that to keep him. Remember, he was about to take a flight to Austin to take a job. You remember? Yeah, Arizona did that to keep him on the staff.
So you would definitely wonder if they would reach out to him. But if they do that, then they're gonna have to play more man and less match 3, which probably they're okay with. And then Joseph has to move to safeties. I don't think you bring Akina in to coach safeties. You could, but it just doesn't feel like the thing to do.
So I'm gonna say what probably there's a good amount of people thinking when you look at safeties coach opening, Pete Kwiatkowski defense, and his own availability. Well, give me the arguments against Jimmy Lake. I know there are a lot of them, but give me the arguments, Justin. Give me the arguments against him.
I like Jimmy Lake. Like I kind of am a fan. Remember, we went Remember, there was years ago where I think he was in the running for some of these jobs, and so we had to do some research on the guy. And he was one. It wasn't he still at Washington up until late, and then he got a job in the NFL, right?
The first year. So the problem with Jimmy Lake is that PK left for that 2021 season. Lake was still head coach.
Right.
That's when Lake, I forget how severe it was, but when he put his hands on a kid and he got fired pretty shortly thereafter, bounced around 2 different NFL jobs. Now he's out of one after being the Falcons defensive coordinator. And so
20 years ago, you're promoted for that. But in the age of 2025, you got to have a meeting, and it's frowned upon when you put your hands on a player. Come on, man. This is football. This isn't kids play. 20, 30 years ago, you promote a guy for doing that. Now he gets in trouble for it. Probably not the perception of coaching that Texas wants at this stage.
I don't think in the NIL era you bring in a guy that swings on kids, as Charlie is saying.
Hey, know that they would be better, though. They would act right.
I don't know for sure.
Swing on your kid. See how good he cleans that room in 5 minutes.
I thought he also had sort of a falling out with PK anyway. I don't know if
there was a weird
top line for PK.
There was a weird back and forth. Like, I think Washington, when Peterson was still there, they understood that PK is not this head coach candidate. He has said as much publicly. Lake was a rising star, so they gave Lake a better title when PK was still there. And then when Peterson retired, they're like, well, we got our guy. Let's try this. And unfortunately, it didn't work out. I don't know what their personal relationship is like. That seems like the most obvious connection, I guess, to say. But it's just, you look at his NFL stuff and you look at his history with PK and you're like, okay, this works. But it's just that incident makes him almost just a non-factor.
Well, he is also the current defensive coordinator for the Atlanta Falcons, I believe.
He got axed. That's why he's available. That's why we're talking about him.
Yeah.
Well, why did he get fired from Atlanta?
Ask Raheem Morris.
They didn't play very good defense this year. And offense got a lot better. Defense, not so much.
And Raheem Morris is a defensive guy, too. So
Taquan Graham can only handle so much.
Before we keep going, got to show some love to one of our sponsors. That is Andre the Lawyer.
This video is brought to you by Andre the Lawyer. If you're injured, trust the team that secured millions for their clients and helped thousands of Texans with their injury case. Car wrecks, slip and falls, 18-wheeler accidents, on-the-job injuries, and wrongful deaths. Don't let insurance tell you what your claim is worth. Hire Andre the Lawyer to fight for you. Principal office is in Dallas, but they serve Texans throughout the state. So don't wait and call Andre the Lawyer today at 214-444-8808. That's 214-444-8808. The contact information is in the description.
Thank you, LC. So, Ian, you mentioned match 3, and that's something that Texas moved towards this year. And PK mentioned that's because, hey, they knew they didn't have Sweat and Murphy in the middle. They're not going to have Sweat and Murphy in the middle again, as much as we may think highly of Shaw, Brevard, January, Canoe, all those guys. So it's going to be ostensibly a match 3 team for a while. But you also have Jonah Williams. So how do you try to maybe maximize Jonah Williams, and what type of background might you bring in to get the most out of a truly talented player?
I think the same thing. Match 3 lets him drop down a lot and play around the box, which is exactly what you want with a big kid like that. How big is he right now, Justin?
Who?
Jonah Williams?
6'2", 205.
He might play at 215.
Yes. Yeah. He maybe a little bigger depending on functional mass and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, a guy like that. Ideally, you have a scheme that makes it really easy to slip him into the box unexpectedly, and with the late disguise. So anybody from the NFL is going to have experience in that. Anybody with a good match 3 background is going to have experience in that. Even the Saban acolytes would be good. Scotty Hazelton would have been really good at that.
Great at that.
Yeah.
Man.
But he's the defensive coordinator now for Wake Forest.
Yeah.
So it's like you want to come back and work under PK and Nansen and Terry Joseph. All 3 of those guys are basically your superiors. And he'll be a position coach. Probably not. I can't imagine that would be his cup of tea.
This one, Justin, I also don't see happen. I think Huff's very, very happy in his role with Texas and doesn't want to go to the full-time part of things.
This looks great on the surface. It would make so much sense to like the average Texas fan, but this just isn't Michael Huff's arena. He could he do it? 100%. I think he could do it. I think he could do it really well if he wanted to. Michael Huff has never done anything bad in his life. Even the worst thing he did was amazingly good. Huff could do it. He's not, that's not where he's at. He loves his role. He loves his responsibility. He loves his ability to go home every afternoon and see his family and spend time with his girls. And so Michael Huff's going to stay around, and he's going to help out in every aspect you could ever imagine. But I just don't see him being a full-time coach.
I will say you're seeing people like just kind of throw out Texas defensive backs of yesteryear, you know?
Yeah, that's basically DBU's getting listed.
That's, probably not the way to choose a coach. But with Terry Joseph back there, and then also with you could still hire another like assistant, like on the extended staff. Like you don't need a home run hire at safeties coach to make this work properly.
You don't.
If you get one, awesome, but it's probably going to be hard to get one because again, you're working for like 3 bosses on defense. You're like the lowest rung on the deal behind Nansen and PK. And yeah. Go ahead, Justin.
If you're an up-and-coming safety coach, let's say that you've got some skins on the wall, some nice programs, and you look at Texas, you look at the room, you look at who they have now, you look at the NIL package that you're delivering for some of these prospects. To me, this makes this position so enticing. Like, does Sark go with the trusty known hire or somebody that he's close to? Or does he look a little harder and a little deeper and maybe get one of those high-rising guys? Because if I'm that guy at another place and I see the opportunities that are in Austin, I see what Gideon was able to accomplish, I would love to come follow that. I would love an opportunity to step into that, learn from PK for a couple of years, maybe get a little bit closer. And then you've got guys that you will be sending to the league in a couple of years, and a Derek Williams, a Michael Taft, guys, a Jelani McDonald, those sorts, and eventually a Jonah Williams.
Do you know who's the up and comer who's really going to basically be the safeties coach next year, no matter who they hire? Michael Taft.
Michael Taft is not taking a pay cut. Not happening.
He's going to be the de facto safeties coach.
Oh yeah. You know what? He's going to be. You're right about that. He's going to have an increased role in 2025. Now they're going to put a lot of this on Michael's plate, and he's the one that can handle it.
Do you know, I'm thinking of 2 different trees maybe to look at when making this hire. And the Peterson tree is one of them, just to think of some of the defenses they had up in the Northwest, the Pacific Northwest. But I'm thinking a little bit of looking at the Barry Odom tree, somebody from that area, and the John Heacock tree.
Why?
Because I know 3 high and match 3 is different, but are there enough similarities to where that would kind of mesh together with what PK runs?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, that could work. I wonder though if Nansen, who have Nansen and Joseph worked with in the past?
Joseph was at Notre Dame. And
I looked there. I didn't see a lot of obvious options.
when
I know
he
Eric
was-
has an article up where he mentioned Doug Belk, and
That's the guy that needs to be mentioned.
Joseph and Elko worked together at
That's
Notre
right.
Dame.
Well, hey, Mike
did he-
Elko could definitely coach safeties. Listen, I would be 100% for Mike Elko coaching safeties, and I could see a world where Elko would leave College Station just so he could be a part of a winning program in Austin. Elko would crush it at safety coach. But that's a good. I need to tweet that. That's a good consideration, Mike Elko. He could do so much better.
But I mean, Ian, one cover 3 kind of part of was that part of their identity at Notre Dame at that time?
Yeah, it was part of it. They were a quarters team a lot with Joseph, and with so he was there for 1 year with Elko, right? And then Clark Lee took over, who's now the defensive coordinator at Vanderbilt.
Well, the head coach, but the
Head coach.
Yeah. Sorry, the head coach, and they are absolutely a match 3 team. They ran it to perfection against Texas this last season. You might look at who they got in the secondary out there in Vanderbilt. They get a lot of defensive backs poached out of there. They coach them up pretty well.
And they had one of their big guys. One was Dericky Wright, and he had I'm pretty sure he entered the portal before the 2024 season and went back to Vanderbilt, and he had a great year. I think I exchanged a message with him. 6'4", 229, and he played safety. So that tells you a little bit about some of the stuff that they probably had him doing. They had one more safety as well, if I can find his name real quick, that played really good football for Vanderbilt during this past year. Come on. Not CJ Taylor. Maybe it was CJ Taylor. But they had some really good defensive backs at Vanderbilt who made a lot of good plays. So maybe that is the place they look to. I wonder why. I wonder who their defensive back coach. We did talk about Jimmy Lake a little bit. Corey Raymond, though, is he at Florida or is he back at LSU at this point?
Doesn't matter. Not happening. Not happening. After the stuff he pulled on Joseph in Texas in the Cade Phillips recruitment, even before that, I would be utterly shocked if Corey Raymond is even in the conversation.
Well, maybe that's exactly the guy you get, right? Like when Justin, you're gonna like this. Remember when Michael Scott poached Timothy Oliphant's character from the rival sales company?
I do.
And everybody's like, he's gonna steal all our clients, and he's like, no, that's what he was doing.
Right.
Now he's stealing clients for us.
No, you're exactly right, and I love that. I love that. The only problem there was that Timothy Oliphant was very successful.
Uh-huh.
He was very successful. Like he
Yeah.
would actually win. He would get clients. And in this case, that wouldn't be the case.
Okay.
Look, it's not. This the fun part about this whole thing is that Gideon did a great job on the field for Texas. He's a legacy, but he is easily replaceable. And the reason why is because any person that would try to convince the Texas staff to sign Aaron Hampton, you can replace, and you can replace quickly. And so this is going to be a fun search.
I've seen this one pop up. We're playing the oldies here. The game has passed Gene Chizik by.
He'd tell you as much.
I don't think he wants to do it. He's 63. I think he coached a little bit for Mac Brown as a little bit of a favor over these past couple of years, and did great things at Texas, but the game has passed him by, and not on field.
A great thing at Auburn too.
Yeah, I don't think the game has passed him by on field, just because I think
they don't forget.
But at the same time, like he doesn't want to do the off-field stuff, and that's why it was pretty panned when Mac hired him for this last go round. And he wasn't even in football in 2024.
Isn't a lot of these assistant jobs now, how much of that is massaging egos and keeping guys out of massage parlors and just a lot of babysitting and drama and all kinds of stuff, right? Like you want the young, up-and-coming, high-energy guy. You don't want the guy that's like old and doesn't have time for dealing with nonsense from 18 to 23-year-old young men with money to burn and living in Austin.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, one of the other aspects of this job, and I'm going to USA Today for this, according to their database, Gideon made $600,000 this past year. And so there are defensive coordinators probably around the country who do not make that much at the Power 5 level.
Did he take it? I wonder if he took a pay cut.
No, it bumped up from 475 and
no, I'm talking about at Georgia Tech.
Maybe.
I bet it's on par. It has to be on par.
It can't be too far down.
But Gideon's a climber. He's one of those climbing coaches, so the money doesn't always have to be that.
Yeah.
He's a climber.
So, like, this is I'm trying to think of who a G5 defensive coordinator. Okay, here's a better idea. What's Tennessee's defensive coordinator's name?
No clue.
Because he's a pretty well-known guy. Tim Banks. Okay. So Blake Gideon was making $600,000 as a safeties coach at Texas in 2024. Tim Banks as the defensive coordinator at Tennessee, 2.15. So maybe that's not the right comparison. But like there are probably jobs in the Power 5 that don't pay their defensive coordinators over $1 million. That's all to say, you can probably go find a defensive coordinator in the Power 5 or in the G5 to come be a safeties coach at Texas
and make more money.
Yes.
Or get you somebody young and up and coming. I'm telling you, this is an opportunity. There are coaches right now. There's a DB coach or a defensive coordinator at a major school right now calling his agent going, hey, can you kick the tires on this? Have you seen Jonah Williams? Have you seen that I've got you'd have Michael Taft as a quarterback back there for a year? Derek Williams is coming along. Jelani McDonald's going to be a freak. Like Jordan Johnson-Rebel can play all three spots. Like get me an interview. Get Sark on the phone. There have to be a number of guys doing that today.
There is also another thing which USC has tried to make use of. Texas made use of it with Jeff Choate. You can go get an FCS head coach to be a position coach because there's a line of thinking that is the path. That is a quicker path to a head coaching job than going from FCS head coach to somehow getting an FBS head coach. So Choate went from Montana State to Texas to Nevada as a position coach. What was the guy at USC, Jason Entz? He went from North Dakota State, which is a top 3 program at this point, to USC, and now he's Fresno State's head coach. So maybe is there a defensive-minded FCS coach in Texas? I know offense kind of rules supreme when you think of places, especially like UIW, but is there a defensive-minded head coach somewhere?
If you're talking just to coach safeties, you could expand that to high school too.
And part of me kind of thought about John Kay.
He's at Rice coaching linebackers, I believe.
Correct. And I've kind of feel like that's more about his connections to Houston than his linebackers.
Hey, I'd be a fan of to see kind of more of that. That would be an interesting one. I think he's going to start climbing as well. He is a hell of a coach and knows so much in that Houston area.
System
respected in that spot.
His system is completely incompatible with Texas, but I assume he could just figure out whatever they do. I'm sure he's pretty sharp.
In this system, just to say, like, go be a better athlete than the other guy.
Yeah, they play like they play like quarters, but it's basically just cover zero, and the linebackers just are like on the line, basically.
When you're at North Shore, you can do that.
It's amazing. They still do it. If anybody hasn't watched North Shore, it's like just like cover zero, 4 across every play, and go get them.
They're like, they dare you. Like, we've got Devin Sanchez and Calicut over here, Chase Calicut. Go ahead and try.
We'll have a lot more insight on what Texas could be looking for at their next safety spot. Before we keep on going, got to show some love to our other sponsor, and that is Laura Baker.
Hi, I want to tell you about Laura Baker. If you're looking for a new home in the 512, or even at this point, let's face it, 737 area code, there's only one number to call. That's Laura Baker at 512-784-0505. As a member of the elite Andy Allen team with Keller Williams, Laura has helped Longhorns find the home of their dreams in Central Texas. Just ask our resident sex symbol, Ian Boyd, who moved all the way from Michigan to Texas with Laura's help. Laura can help you find what you're looking for in the 512, the 737, or even parts of the 254 and the 210. Just, give her a call at 512-784-0505. Her email is in the description, as well as the rest of her contact details. She's a friend. Give her a call.
Joe, one more name. Drew Kelson.
Speaking of cover zero.
What do you say, Drew? I don't think Drew wants that headache.
I know for a fact Drew doesn't want that.
I got daughters. I got a good job. I'm not trying to deal with this.
Drew probably makes more at his job than he would in Texas.
Oh, wait. Is he actually DC? I did not know that. I thought he was just linebackers coach.
Maybe he got bumped up. I thought he started at linebackers, and he's been there 2 years now. I didn't realize he had got moved to DC. That's significant.
That was one of the better hires that Bloomgren made. Bloomgren was in a tough spot.
Well, that was good timing too. As soon as I'd said that, Drew chimed in. It's like he sensed us with the force that we were talking about him.
Oh, they did. They promoted him to defensive coordinator.
I bet he would get a pay bump at Texas.
Yeah.
But who knows?
Hey, if he could get Devin Sanchez to flip and transfer, I'm team John Kay.
Would be fun. Always respect a guy who benches his best player to still win a title game. Before we go into the national title picture, did y'all see this? That our old friend Charlie Strong is still bouncing around in the NFL.
I love it. I think in his introductory press interview, he basically just went through the roster on the defensive line. They've got like 11 or 12 guys, and he just like went through each one and said like one thing about each of them. So Charlie's still sharp. Charlie's still getting it.
He's it was such a slap in the face when Red McComb was like, he's a good position coach when they hired him as head coach. But he really is like one of the all-time great talent evaluation, player relationships. He was amazing.
Both of those, absolutely.
He was so fun to have as the face of the program. It was enjoyable, even though they were, god awful and couldn't play football.
Dude, let me tell you something. If Charlie Strong had a real quarterback, there is no telling what the future would have held.
That was his own fault, so.
Yes and no. Yes and no.
100%.
I would blame him. Bring in Sean Watson should get some of that blame as well. And he brought him in. You're right.
They were in the University of Texas, and they were like, Kyle Loxley.
Yeah.
This 6'6" kid from New Mexico.
The Ryan, the tight end that
went tight end in Michigan. Matthew Merrick will solve it all for us.
Oh my God!
And then the ultimate Hail Mary trying to get Kyler that fell short too.
Oh yeah, well that would have worked if they had done that. So
golly, I still remember walking down Dean Keaton and seeing that picture of the one jersey. And I'm like, whoa!
That was all staged and it worked. It got the attention. That's what it was supposed to do.
I'll defer to you on it.
He wasn't coming to Texas.
If you're watching now, we spent the first 40 minutes going over assistant coaches, looking at what who could replace Blake Gideon, what he meant to Texas. But it's the peak of the offseason. We're not going to do the bombard with Arch Manning thing, even though we talked about that last night. But there are a good amount of prognosticators, including 2 at On3, who have picked here in February Texas to be the national champion come next year. And the first one's from Ari Wasserman. The other one is from Andy Staples. And the unique thing, I'll put Andy's up in a little while, but the unique thing about both these guys is they have Texas winning the SEC. They have Texas seemingly defeating the number 2 team in the SEC, maybe the number 3 team if you look at the other one, and then going all the way to the national title. So,
and beating Ohio State twice.
Yeah, that's for both of those a little bit different paths. But when I'll pop Andy's up in a second. And here, let me zoom in real quick on Ari's. You can see Twitter's acting weird. Texas beating Alabama, Texas beating Oregon, and then Texas beating Ohio State. You look at Andy Staples.
That's a lot to
It's
add.
Texas beating Georgia, Texas beating Ohio State, and Texas beating Notre Dame. Let's kind of start at the back a little bit. These guys have Texas winning the SEC championship. Does that make a lot of sense to y'all?
It makes some sense.
A little bit.
I don't know about a lot of sense.
It just feels early.
I
don't know what the defensive front's going to look like. They've got the roster for it.
The more I look at this roster, the more I'm like, they better add some pieces in the spring. They got a lot of positions that are like,
yes.
There's not a single offensive skill position room that has a dude that anyone knows for sure is going to be a championship caliber player. Tight end? No. Running back? No. Wide receiver? No. I mean, they might at all 3 of those spots, but nobody that you're like, for sure. Things look great here.
So one of the big arguments and discussion points about college football now is that you could say that about all 12 teams on this graphic.
No, I don't think so.
Only a few of the teams on this graphic have the roster that Texas does.
No, I mean, but you're poking like, oh, there's holes here. Yeah.
You're right. You're right. You could poke holes in everything out here, which makes it fun. That makes it, that adds to the mystery of it.
Like Ohio State is starting a true or a redshirt freshman,
and they are losing a ton on both sides of the ball.
Oregon, their quarterback situation is not determined. Boise State doesn't have Genty. Penn State, they lose some of their defensive difference makers. Alabama starting over at quarterback. Georgia starting over at quarterback.
Notre Dame starting over at quarterback.
South Carolina's losing one of their all these teams have the similar type of holes. But we'll carry that out. Like who do you perceive as being in a better situation right now than maybe Texas?
I'll give you 3 teams that catch my eye. Georgia it's Georgia. They are loaded. They got those tight ends back. They added Noah Williams.
Thomas? No, not Noah Thomas.
Noah Thomas from A&M. He's like reliable. He catches the ball when you throw it at him, unlike the guys they had last year. Okay, hold on. Alabama, Ryan Williams and Jeremy Bernard are back.
Who's throwing him the ball?
Yeah, who's throwing the ball?
Somebody that actually throws, somebody that's not a running back.
Is that on the roster?
That's an excellent point.
They're
not on the roster.
Don't sleep on Ty Simpson, and Austin Mack is a second-year player now.
Is Ty Simpson still there?
Somehow.
Yeah.
I thought he was at Tulane. Okay.
Ty
Thompson. That was Ty Thompson.
The big one that I see that Wasserman is on here, freaking Clemson, man. Antonio Williams is back in the slot. Those two outside dudes,
Bryant
that turned it
Wesco.
on in the postseason, are back. Cade Klubnik slowly transformed into maybe the best quarterback in the country. Parker.
Maybe would you call him generational, Ian?
The edge Parker is back. The defensive tackle Peter Woods is back. They shipped off Venables' old henchman Wes Goodwin to Oklahoma and replaced him with Tom Allen, who coordinated Penn State's defense in Indiana before that. Clemson looks really good to me. I like them a lot for next year.
I think their only problem is going to be the offensive line.
Yeah, but it's never.
But you're right. Their skill guys are top notch. I like that. With Ari's, you got to love him going out on a limb with Illinois. So Illinois is going to be better than Michigan. They're going to be better than. I mean,
Illinois is a trendy pick because they won 9 or 10 games and brought everybody back.
No, I get that. I think Terrence Brooks is still holding it down at one of the corner spots over there. I get it. It's unique to see some of the new names. I'm telling you, South Carolina is the one in there that scares the crap out of me. I think South Carolina could make a run. They got the best defensive front probably in college football, and Lenora Sellers is a playmaker. If he's healthy, they're always in the game.
Ari's bracket has 4 SEC teams, and then
I think there was a rule for that.
4 SEC teams, 4 Big Ten teams, 1 ACC, 1 independent,
1 Big 12,
and then 1 Big 12 and 1 Mountain West.
1 Big 12. You gotta love that. Joey McGuire is gonna hate this.
We'll look at Andy's real quick. Texas getting past Georgia. Both of these have Texas beating Ohio State twice.
I mean,
and it's going to be Ryan Day too.
No pressure.
That'd be very satisfying, though.
Go beat Ohio State twice, then go to Athens. Go beat Georgia in Georgia. We got you. You can do this.
With looking at Andy's, Illinois there, BYU winning the Big 12, Tulane in that G5 spot, and then Florida sneaking. If he sees this, he's going to laugh, and this is said in jest. Major Florida homer Andy Staples picking the Gators at number 11.
Yeah, about that. Hey, I expect DJ Lagway to wow college football in 2025. He is going to be so popular and so much fun to watch. I don't think Florida is a playoff type team yet, though. No.
It might be.
Do they have my thing is I don't worry about what they have on offense. I worry about what they have on defense.
Yeah.
They had some great athletes last year, really, and I think a few of them were out in the Texas game, which kind of helped lead to the blowout. But
yes,
Florida on offense has some guys. They really do. I think they brought in a couple of transfer receivers too. They've got some guys. I just wonder about that Florida defense isn't the Florida defense we've been used to for the last 5, 10, 15 years.
I don't know what to think about Oregon yet. Just because
another quarterback.
Because I love Dante Moore, but everybody there and everybody at UCLA even thought Dante Moore needed a little bit more seasoning. And so do they hand the keys over to them? I don't that's my big hang up about Oregon. They're always going to have talent. They have Ian, they're going to have some outside receivers up there.
2 from DFW.
For whoever is throwing the ball up there. We know how much you value outside receivers.
They got Stewart. Who's the other one?
DeCorey and Moore.
Oh, yeah. True freshman.
Yeah. But faster than everybody.
I wonder if they just play him in the slot, though, because it's easier.
He's not the longest kids. Evans, 5'10", 5'11". DeCorian's maybe 6 foot, 6.5 maybe.
What do y'all think about the Penn State love early on?
No way. Total Nick Singleton fan. I love Nick Singleton, but as long as Drew Aller is the quarterback there, I think you are handcuffed.
Their two best players are gone.
Tyler Warren ain't walking through that door.
And Abdul Carter.
Oh, that too. Golly.
I mean, those guys are
Yeah.
they're
Those
really
are top
very
15.
good.
Those two guys probably go in the top 15.
All their wide receivers in the portal. Well, their receivers weren't actually any good though.
Yeah,
That's not a loss.
I don't know if they will upgrade though. Is the thing.
Why would you? They're a running team.
But yeah, I don't like. Always bet against James Franklin. It's a very easy bet to make.
So if you're right now thinking, let's do the Power 4 conference titles next year, and I'm going to write this down. I'm going to etch this in stone and hold you all to it about a year. SEC champion,
Georgia. Maybe Alabama.
Look, if Gunnar Stockton plays smart and well and manages, they should be the favorite. I'm not saying win it. They should be the favorite.
He has a cannon.
Somebody has to knock them off, guys. They have been winning it, especially with Saban out, the kryptonite of Kirby Smart. Until you beat Georgia, I think you still have to say Georgia.
I think that's fair.
all right, Big Ten.
Ooh, good Lord.
Is this a year where
Oregon?
somebody just really out of the blue
Yeah.
shows up in that conference? Like, it's not going to be Michigan State, but like, is this an Iowa year?
Hey, they've got Dylan Raylos, so Nebraska's got the quarterback.
And Nebraska rule, they're going to be in year 3. Their quarterback won't be a greenhorn anymore.
Yeah, like
They
Nebraska
could make a leap.
They could. I like that. I think the Bryce Underwood era starts off in Ann Arbor in smashing fashion. I think that team's going to be good. They just signed Ty Haywood yesterday, elite 5-star offensive tackle out of Denton Ryan. Like, stole him from Alabama. Michigan, don't sleep on Michigan. I don't think Sharon Moore is that great of a quarterback, but I think they've done a pretty good job stocking that roster.
If the ball bounces the right way twice, Iowa could be 10-2.
Sure. You're always a few bounces away from Iowa at 10-2 for sure.
And
take the under.
Do you guys remember when Michigan had Beeline and they would take like fringe 4-star dudes? Fringe, not French. German was their preferred ethnicity, actually. But and then he would build like deep running March Madness team after team and just like crank out NBA prospects. And then they got Juwan Howard.
Right.
And all of a sudden they were flush with cash and they were getting all these Nike All-Americans, but they sucked and they cratered because they weren't developing. They were just bringing in star high schoolers, and it wasn't.
You think the football team is mirroring that?
It looks exactly the same.
You're
they
right.
went from getting Jim
No,
Harbaugh,
he's right, Joe.
low 4 stars, and developing them and hammering them forging them into NFL players and awesome teams, to Sharon Moore and the Oracle dude, and we're just going to throw money at every 5-star in the country.
Is it a problem to have Bryce Underwood?
Yeah, if you pay him $10 million and you have to start him as a freshman and he doesn't know what he's doing. I mean, you think Luka had conditioning problems, like nobody in Dallas could tell Luka what to do? At least Luka was awesome. Like, what if Bryce Underwood isn't even any good? And he makes more money than his position coach, and he's like, whatever. I don't know much about him. Maybe he's not like that.
I was
55 minutes without bringing that up.
we're on a record. I mean, I did very minimal research into Bryce Underwood because I'm like, that guy's not coming in this class.
You were a closet fan. Let it out.
But I was, and I listened to we all like Bud Elliott.
Oh, yeah.
And I think Bud said, like, look, there's only one Cam Newton, and my hand is off screen for a reason. But, like, Bryce is on that continuum with Cam Newton. Like he said, basically kind of closest thing to Cam Newton out of high school since Cam Newton. And again,
so we'll look for him to have an amazing year after he gets kicked out of Michigan for stealing laptops.
He'll go JUCO, and then he'll go JUCO, win a national championship at Tyler Junior College,
and then to the SEC.
Then to the SEC. That kid has Auburn written all over him.
He was about to go to LSU, but it took he stayed home. So I'm curious about Michigan, but hey, the Ohio State quarterback situation, and especially the offensive coordinator situation, now that Brian Hartline is supposed to be the play caller, that's something that we got to track over the course of the season. And yeah, Justin, he went to Blinn. He was a Buccaneer.
I didn't say Cam went to Tyler. I'm saying Bryce Underwood would go to Tyler because it's closer and it's a funny joke. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about, going to JUCO. Cam Newton went to Blinn, won a national title. I don't want Bryce going down there near College Station. Why would you wish that upon anybody? You bring him back to God's country here in East Texas and let him be an Apache at Tyler Junior College, follow in the steps of the General Booty.
Oh man, there's a lot of
Blinn. Trust me, I know people at Blinn that did not think highly of Cam. And when the Cam would come in the locker room, everybody locked their lockers. Everybody gets their locks and their keys. They're like, "Oh, wait, is Cam coming? Hold on." Turn on the codes. They had to make sure Cam would get your.
I'm bet Must Be Heaven was a popular spot after Blinn won the national title. Maybe about 4 people understand that reference. Anything else on the rest, or we want to get into a little bit of Super Bowl talk?
Let's talk Super Bowl.
All right. We will save the East Texas angle for just a little bit. But Ian, when you look at the way that Philadelphia maybe has won football games this year, do you think that's replicable against the Steve Spagnuolo defense?
No. I saw that it's almost like a replay of last year. Last year they went in, the 49ers went into that game with Christian McCaffrey. He had run for like 2,000 yards or something wild, right? He had like 350 carries. And they got to that final game at the end of the year, and Chris Jones was lined up in the other line of scrimmage. And what happened to the 49er run game?
Not there.
I think Saquon Barkley and the Eagles are going to run into the exact same problem. They've had 2 weeks to prepare for your run game. They're going to put it on. They're going to make Jalen Hurts beat him, and he's not going to be able to do it again.
I got to tell you guys, as much as I hate the Eagles, Saquon Barkley was the perfect fit for what that team needed. And he is playing at such a high level right now. Like, yeah, I'm with you. Kansas City's going to dial up some stuff. You got Chris Jones. You got Charles Omenihu. You got a good front there. You got great linebacker play, Nick Bolton and those guys. I like their secondary. But I just think Saquon is playing at another level. And even if they scheme to that, it's going to be tough to keep him down. Now, you force Jalen Hurts to beat you, I like KC by double digits. But Saquon, there's just something about the Eagles this year where Saquon is just – that guy is playing out of his mind. Best running back in the NFL right now.
Let's go over the Longhorns in this one. 3 are playing. We'll go high profile first. Xavier Worthy, first round pick from the Chiefs. Our guy RT Young wrote a great article today about how Xavier Worthy was Sark's first recruit. Ian, I know you like to say he was a transfer, and I'll nitpick with you on that because technically he wasn't. Got to Texas kind of all the same after being committed, signed, involved with another school. He's been a very big part of the Chiefs' offense this year. Another weapon for Patrick Mahomes and somebody that has really succeeded in his role and is going to go against a Philadelphia defense with Vic Fangio, probably pretty ready to make sure number one doesn't get very many opportunities.
Yeah, you figure they got to be keying him a little bit because Vic Fangio wants to keep the ball in front of him, but you can keep Worthy in front of you. But if he hits a crease, he's going to break angles. And bend don't break can get into trouble if he hits, a straight line. What stood out to me is they do a pretty good job of getting Worthy the ball and letting him just run into open space.
They get him on that when motion off the line.
They
That's
do.
where he's deadly.
They're also really good at doing that to create easy dink and dunk stuff for somebody
that Patrick
else.
Thrives at.
That Patrick thrives at. So he's Andy Reid. He's just he's the Bill Belichick of offense in the NFL, as far as I'm concerned.
They gave him more toys, and he's still playing with his toys, and he's a Hall of Fame. The best thing about Andy Reid is he's the winningest coach on both teams.
Yeah,
I hadn't even thought about that.
Yeah,
he's a Hall of Famer. I love that guy.
Oh, without a doubt.
Love that guy.
So easy.
He had to deal with Donovan McNabb and Terrell Owens. You give that guy, you open the pearly gates when it's his time's gone through. He gets a pass to go hang out with the big Jesus.
With we'll go to the Chiefs. Stay on the Chiefs side of things. Everybody talks about Chris Jones playing on multiple spots on that defensive front, and also some of the other pieces there for the Chiefs. But Charles Omenihu has become a very, very critical part of this Chiefs defense, and has been very much relied. He has become the player I think we so expected him to become when we saw him at Rowlett a decade ago.
And he's got a chip on his shoulder because if you'll remember, he missed the Super Bowl last year. He had that terrible injury in the AFC Championship game, and so he wasn't able to play. And that actually might back up what Ian was talking about. If they move Chris Jones a little bit and to try to neutralize Saquon, you've got a Omenihu in there now, who I think is more of a pass rush guy from the interior than he is a run stopper, but he's done both. And so I think having that big boy down there, I know he's happy. I know we're so excited for him. You can't have joy in life if you're not happy for a Charles Omenihu. But he's healthy. He's so excited that he actually gets to play in this game, and he was effective last year. He's been effective this year. And you know what the best thing about Charles is? He didn't play that much this year, so he's not tired or wore down at all. I bet that guy goes for 50 or 60 snaps on Sunday. He can leave it out all on the field. Man, it's going to be a good game. I think Philadelphia gives them a really good matchup. The only chance I give Philly is Saquon. But I think like you said, with Chris Jones, with Charles back there, I love what Nick Bolton does. That's a Texas high school football kid. Remember Frisco Lone Star, went to Missouri. Nobody really paid attention to him. I think it was all SEC defense and at Mizzou. Yeah. Carries it over to Kansas City. He's a machine. He's like a mini Fred Warner. Guy is tremendous.
I got Jimmy Lake's Trent McDuffie, too, in the secondary.
Trent McDuffie, it is – you know how hard it is to become all pro? Pro Bowl is one thing, and then all pro, and the guy's gone like 3 years without an interception. That shows you how freaking good he is. He can't get an interception, but, man, he keeps making those all-pro teams year after year. Washington grad, that dude is great back there.
The last Longhorn that we need to talk about is Moro Ojomo playing defensive tackle for the Eagles, and I'm trying to double check who he's backing up, and I think I figured it out. The Eagles have a super freak in Jalen Carter. Everybody's like, how'd this guy end up at the 9th overall pick? Well, you look at his driving record, and you can understand why he was the 9th overall pick. But that doesn't take away from the fact that he is one of the elite football players on this field come Sunday. His backup's Moro Ojomo. Ojomo plays in the B gap, kind of spelling Carter whenever he's off the field. And Ojomo is he has made the most, Ian, of an opportunity in the NFL. I thought he was a little bit underdrafted, but at the same time, he's made the most of playing behind an elite talent on a good Eagles defense.
Do y'all remember when he was it was like the first year that they had the early signing period? And so Ojomo was one of the guys that didn't sign in the first signing period. and he was on like a legendary Katy defense, like one of the greatest high school defenses we've ever seen. And then everybody wanted him in that second window, even though he was like a 3-star. He was like, it was like last girl at the bar kind of thing. And Texas had to fight off like everybody in the country to get Ojimo to come in.
Oklahoma and Oregon, they had to fight those two.
I feel like Nebraska in it.
A&M.
Yeah, but when we talked to him right before signing day, it was Oklahoma was the school that could flip him. And we'll go off the air when you want to tell the story of how that turned out. But then Oregon also almost blew him away. But those were the two schools he had mentioned to me that had a chance to get him.
He had a great career at Texas. He was never the most famous defensive tackle at Texas at any time. As far as like Keandre Coburn or Devondre Sweat or whoever, but he was quite good. And you'll see him make plays for the Eagles. They rotate. They're built around their D line. It's like him and a bunch of Georgia guys.
That's all that Philadelphia Eagles are on defense. They decided a couple of years ago just to draft every Georgia Bulldog from that 2 national title back-to-back run, and it's paid off. Nolan Smith is a monster. Like they just decided, hey, you can't go wrong with Georgia guys. I bet there's 5 or 6 Bulldogs on that defense.
I'm with you on that one. All right, Justin, time to give you the Mahomes minute or 2 minutes if you want to talk about how that quarterback from White House may be able to put himself into some elite territory.
Yeah, it's he's looking to be lead the first team to back-to-back Super Bowls. We've had a few teams that got close, notably my Dallas Cowboys in the mid-'90s. It's funny. Somebody tweeted about this last year when they were having doubts about Kansas City's run and Mahomes. At this stage, how do you bet against Mahomes? Like Ian sent me something earlier, and it's just the most ridiculous stat. And it's just, and I'm not saying Philadelphia can't win this game. I think they absolutely can. I think Barkley's the reason if they do, they can. But I can't, in my right mind, bet against Patrick Mahomes. They just reload and reset and come up with new stuff, and they're constantly evolving. One of the backup tight ends was with the Cowboys the last couple of years, and he said it's night and day, the franchise. At Dallas, it's the image, it's the signings, it's all the hoopla. He goes, man, I got to Kansas City. It's about 2 things, the team and winning, period. That's all they do. And I think Mahomes is a microcosm of that. He just continues to make plays. I really hate the narrative that referees have something to do with it. I really don't. I just think people can't beat Mahomes. Simple as that. We didn't really hear the ref thing when Michael Jordan was making runs. We knew how great Jordan was, even though he was getting calls. He's all pro, but he was making runs because he was Michael Jordan. I think the same thing for Patrick Mahomes. He's making runs because he's Patrick Mahomes. And whatever situation you put him in, he's being prepared for it. There's nothing you're going to show him he hasn't seen. There's no butterflies. He goes to the Super Bowl as much as I go to the grocery store. And so it's like this to me, you can't bet against Mahomes until you see him get knocked down. This Philly defense is going to be stout. Listen, their DBs are good. I love Darius Slay. I really like Quinyon Mitchell, that rookie corner they have that had a great year. They've got dudes back there. It's going to be a test, but I'm not betting against Patrick Mahomes, not if I just want to give away money.
Ian? Nothing to add. I never bet against Patrick Mahomes. I've watched Patrick Mahomes lose in the playoffs to Tom Brady and
Joe Burrow.
That's it, right?
That's it.
I had Joe Burrow once.
That's it. Yeah. There's a reason I overdraft him in fantasy leagues. Oh, what are you doing taking a quarterback? It's Patrick Mahomes.
And that is the smart thing to do, Joe, except in 2024. That backfired on me. That was not the way to go. He was not good in fantasy in 2024 whatsoever. But I think it's because he's so used to winning Super Bowls. He's like, yeah, I'll turn this thing on around November. I'm going through the motions. The Chiefs have played more football games than anybody in the NFL in 30 years within that 5-6 year window. And so they just don't turn it on until October, November, maybe December. It starts getting cold. They start to try.
Speaking of playing more football games, I know there's been some talk. I know Matt Rule, we can get out on this.
Yeah.
Matt Rule kind of floated the idea of like, oh, we may not want to play our spring game. Sounds like there are reports of Texas considering not playing the spring game. Naaman, I don't think it's about playing 14 to 15 games a year. Justin, it seems like all the complaints about it these days are like, oh, it's this, oh man, it's silly football coach paranoia. And I don't think that's a reason to cancel a pretty fun thing in the spring. Of course, I'm selfish. I want stuff to write about. But
you got to understand, Matt Rule sometimes he's one of those guys that says stuff before he thinks it through. It just pops in his mind. He's like, hey, this is going to sound good. Like realize, lies, realize. Like that sounded like a song from the Eagles in the 70s. He didn't even think it through. He just says it. And I think this is him being a little bitter because he holds an event like a spring game like every other school does in the country. And he's afraid that some other schools are going to come after some of his players. Buddy, they're going to come after your players if you play a spring game or not. And if you don't think these guys, these sources, these people in the industry don't know what's going on in your practices once you start spring ball, think again, bud. The spring game is not going to prevent you. I think that was more of him standing on a soapbox saying, hey, we need some reform, or we need to protect our players a little bit more, or protect my players from getting pillaged by other schools because I'm not starting them. That was him more, I think, complaining than saying something that's actually real. I think the schools like the coaches are paranoid. They don't care for the spring game. Everybody else does. The school does. The athletic department does. The fans do. I know Texas fans, they enjoy the spring game. Look, the Texas Longhorns need a spring game this year. There are some spots we need to see depth. We need to see some development. We need to see who's going to take certain steps and who can be reliable in 2025. I think it's just Matt Rule talking again. And, he talks a big game, and I think he's a hell of a football coach. It's proven. He goes to a program. He will draft. He will recruit well. He'll develop. He'll turn those guys around. But canceling a spring game because you're worried about some of your players getting pillaged, let me tell you, buddy, if your players are good enough, they're going to be approached by other coaches no matter if you play a spring game or not.
Naaman, we talk about this in the deep dive, me and Paul. We talk about this spring game and all that and the potential changes and why. It's a lot of what Justin's been getting into. If you want to tune in at 12 when that goes live, it'll be a whole section on that.
Another thing is, even if the spring game's not televised, you know where all the film of those guys is? On one of these. So even if Big Ten Network's not televising it, or if the SEC Network's not televising it, practice film's going to get out.
What do you think the rest of the Big Ten coaches, when they saw that interview or they saw that little blurb from Rule, what they thought?
I wonder what they thought because our buddy Bob in Houston on the Inside Texas message board said, like, Nebraska's spring game among spring games, kind of a big deal. Like, it is, of all the 40, every state's football hungry. Every fan base is crazy. But, like, there's not – I'm trying to be careful when I talk about here. There's a unique relationship between regular citizens of the state of Nebraska and Nebraska Cornhuskers football that I don't know carries over to a lot of different states. And the spring game is an opportunity for maybe a lot of those regular citizens who can't get into a sold-out game in Memorial Stadium in the fall to go and see what they like to see. So
yeah, it's cheaper for the fans that can't afford it.
It's free. And so for Rule to say that, knowing how important that is in Nebraska football, think of it what you may, I don't know what he's trying to get at. But I like spring games. Justin, you and I always talk, the most important thing is to get out of it without injury. It's a 15th practice. It's fun. It gives you a little bit of a preview for the next year. We like the fact that Arch and Trey Owens tore things up in the most recent spring game. Made it a lot of fun for us and gave us some film to evaluate. So
you think Texas is going to miss an opportunity to have Arch Manning trot out there and not get hit and throw bombs? They're not missing that.
That'll play on the recruiting trail. So,
yeah, and there'll be recruits there. It's just Matt Rule talking out of one side of his mouth. Remember, he lies about real eyes, about lying eyes. I swear to God, he loves the song from the Eagles from the Urban Cowboy soundtrack.
I do wonder maybe if y'all know what Ole Miss did this last year. They kind of turned it in, not so much a game, not even so much a scrimmage, but like a jamboree where they had like Jackson Dart doing dunk contest stuff on a 9-foot hoop and a flag football game. I know that's cheapens the experience a little bit, but I wonder if they don't maybe if teams don't move into more of a celebration fun thing as opposed to like a true like all
Almost
right,
like a carnival.
yeah. Maybe
that was just Lane Kiffin's way of getting more co-eds closer to the field.
Maybe we'll never know Joey Freshwater's true motivation. So, all right, with that, good 76 minutes of talk. Appreciate y'all watching. We will be back in about an hour recorded. That'll be Ian and Paul on the deep dive. Eric and I will be on the Inside the Program tomorrow. And LC's got a very interesting conversation coming up on Saturday with a Sports Illustrated photographer. So make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel. Of course, go to InsideTexas.com. We got all the latest updates. We'll have a lot of Blake Gideon stuff there as well. Fallout from that. Maybe
I'll have some Booby Feaster. Good stuff. Good quotes. Good in-depth stuff from one of the best wide receivers in the country. Come to InsideTexas.com to read it, enjoy it, comment, reply. Let's have a day.
We'll see you next time on the Inside Texas Football YouTube channel powered by InsideTexas.com.